Robert Downey Jr. went from prison time and uninsurable risk to the face of a billion-dollar superhero empire. This is how rock bottom became Iron Man. But before the comeback, you have to understand the childhood that shaped him. Before the red and gold armor, before the comeback became a Hollywood legend, before anyone could call Robert Downey Jr. a safe bet, there was a kid born into a world that was already unstable, creative, and a little dangerous. Robert John Downey Jr. arrived on April 4th, 1965, in New York City. Not into a traditional show business dynasty with clean lines and careful career planning, into something stranger. His father, Robert Downey Sr., was a filmmaker with an outsider's eye, the kind of artist working far from the polished center of Hollywood. His mother, Elsie, was an actress, so for Robert, performance was not some distant dream. It was in the room. It was dinner table conversation. It was the family business, before he was old enough to understand what a business even was. And then, at 5 years old, he was already on screen. His debut came in Pound, a 1970 film written and directed by his father. Think about that for a second. Most children are still learning how to sit still in a classroom. Downey was being placed inside a movie set, inside his father's vision, learning the strange rhythm of cameras, takes, attention, and adult expectations. That is an incredible head start. It is also a lot to put on a child, because talent was never the only thing being handed down here. Downey's childhood roots gave him access, yes, but not stability. He grew up surrounded by art, experimentation, and performance, but that same environment came with blurred boundaries. The odds stacked against him were not obvious from the outside. He was not trying to break into entertainment from nowhere. He was already inside it, but that can be its own trap. When the stage is your playground, you can learn charisma before caution. You can learn how to be watched before you learn who you are when nobody is watching. That tension is the seed of the whole story. The gift was there early. You can see why people would be drawn to him. The timing, the ease, the spark that makes a camera pay attention. But nothing about his beginning suggested a straight line to superhero fame. If anything, it set up a more complicated question. What happens when a child raised inside the chaos of creativity grows into an actor everyone can see is brilliant, but no one can yet depend on? That is where the next chapter begins. Then came the role that proved Hollywood couldn't ignore him. By the mid-1980s, Robert Downey Jr. was no longer just the talented kid from an artistic household. He was trying to prove he could survive in the actual machine, and the machine did not immediately make room for him. During the 1985 to 1986 season, Downey became a cast member on Saturday Night Live. On paper, that sounds like a launch pad, one of the most famous comedy institutions in America. Live television, national attention, a stage where young performers could become household names almost overnight. But for Downey, it was not the clean breakthrough you might expect. That season did not turn him into the breakout star of the show. It did not instantly solve the question hanging over him. Was he just interesting, just charismatic, just connected to a film world upbringing? Or was he a serious actor with the force to carry major work? That answer came later, and it came through a role that could have swallowed him whole. Charlie Chaplin. In Chaplin, Downey was not being asked to simply show up with charm. He had to take on one of the most recognizable figures in movie history. The walk, the timing, the physical control, the emotional shadow behind the comedy. This was not a casual part. It was a test. If he got it wrong, everybody would know. If he got it right, the conversation around him would change. And it did. Downey's performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for actor in a leading role at the 65th Academy Awards in 1993. That same year, he won the BAFTA Film Award for leading actor. That is the moment the industry had to stop treating him like a promising oddity and start treating him like a major talent, because awards do something in Hollywood that raw charisma cannot always do. They make talent official. They turn whispers into headlines. They give studios, critics, and audiences a shared language. This person is real. And, for Downey, Chaplin was the leap onto the big stage. not as a superhero, not as a comeback story, not as a cautionary tale, as an actor capable of carrying a demanding, high-profile film and being recognized at the highest level for it. For a moment, the path looked wide open. But that is what makes the next turn so brutal, because once Hollywood finally knew how gifted he was, the question became much darker. Could he hold on to it? Then came the performances that turned comeback into total Hollywood dominance. By the time Robert Downey Jr. entered his true peak, the old question had changed. It was no longer, can he act? Everybody knew he could act. The question now was sharper. Could he become the center of something enormous and not break it? That is what made the next phase so dangerous. Because Hollywood does not hand giant machines to actors it cannot trust. Big franchises are not built on charm alone. They are built on reliability, repeatability, and the belief that one face can carry hundreds of millions of dollars in risk. And then came Tony Stark. Marvel Studios cast Downey in Iron Man after Jon Favreau advocated for him. That decision was not just another role. Marvel later described it as one of the defining decisions in the company's film history. Think about what that means. Before the armor became iconic, before Tony Stark became inseparable from Downey's own public image, this was a bet. Marvel needed an actor who could make a billionaire weapons manufacturer funny, damaged, arrogant, wounded, and somehow lovable. Too slick, and you hate him. Too soft, and you do not believe him. Too serious, and the whole thing collapses under its own machinery. Iron Man was released on May 2, 2008, and grossed about $318.6 million at the domestic box office. That number mattered because it proved the audience was not just accepting him, they were showing up for him. The comeback was no longer a headline, it was a business model. This is where Downey became dominant. Not because he was the loudest actor in the room, but because he could control tone better than almost anyone. He could turn a joke into armor. He could let a silence reveal damage. He could make spectacle feel personal. And once that worked, he became the kind of star studios dream about and rivals quietly fear. The performer whose presence can turn risk into momentum. But the peak did not end with a metal suit. Years later, Downey won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 2024 for playing Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer. Different scale, different energy, no superhero gloss, just precision, restraint, and the reminder that underneath the global fame was still the actor who could disappear into a difficult part. That is the real power of his peak. He did not just survive long enough to be forgiven. He became undeniable. And now the question becomes how a man once seen as too risky became one of the safest bets in Hollywood. But his comeback didn't just save him, it reshaped Hollywood. So, what does Robert Downey Jr. leave behind? Not just a famous role, not just a comeback. Something rarer. He changed what Hollywood believed a fallen star could become. You have to understand the size of that shift. Before him, a troubled actor could be forgiven. Maybe. They could get a smaller part, a cautious second chance, a quiet return if the work was good enough. But Downey's legacy is that he did not come back small. He came back at the center of one of the highest stakes bets in modern studio filmmaking, and then made that bet look obvious. That is the part people forget. Legacy is not just what audiences remember. It is what the industry copies after you prove something works. After Downey, risks started to look different. A past did not automatically erase a future. Charisma could be complicated. Damage could become texture. A leading man did not have to arrive polished, untouched, or safe in the old-fashioned sense. He could carry history on his face and still sell the fantasy. And that is why Tony Stark matters beyond the suit. Downey did not simply play a genius with flaws. He made the flaws part of the engine. The nervous rhythm, the deflection, the jokes that arrive half a second before the pain does. That became a new model for blockbuster acting. Suddenly, the giant machine did not need to flatten the performer. The performer could humanize the machine. That is what he will be remembered for, making spectacle feel personal. But his story does not freeze there. The later acclaim proved something just as important. He was not trapped inside the comeback. He was not only the guy who survived disaster. and he was not only the face inside the helmet. He could still step into serious dramatic work and be judged on craft, not nostalgia. That gives the legacy its real weight. Downey's career now stands as one of the clearest examples in American film of talent nearly lost, trust slowly rebuilt, and public perception completely rewritten. Rock Bottom did not disappear from the story. It became the contrast that makes the ending impossible to ignore. And that is where we leave him for now. Not as a warning, not as a miracle, but as proof that a second act can become the defining act. But there is one last question hiding under all of it. What did that transformation cost? Thanks for watching and being part of this journey through Robert Downey Jr.'s remarkable life and career. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing. More stories behind the people who shaped culture are coming soon.